You're able to hear me? Let me call Priti. Hi, hello, Priti. The slides are visible to you? Sound is there? Okay, we'll start the lecture. Just wait. Good morning, everybody. So, in the last time we were discussing something about the structural aspect of the skeletal muscle, and there we have seen that what is the functional organization of skeletal muscles. So there we have seen we have muscle fibers which are covered by connective tissues, and they form bundles, and then they form muscle belly. And inside the muscle fiber, you have myofibrils, and these myofibrils are made up of myofilament, thick and thin filaments. Thick filaments are basically myosin filaments, and thin filament is made up of actin, myosin, uh, actin, tropomyosin, and troponins. You know? So these were some few important points of last lectures. That was some basically concerned with how the muscle fiber is organized, or they are arranged in a muscle belly. Now we are going to next topic, that is your excitation, contraction, coupling. See, excitation, contraction, coupling deal with how the contraction of the skeletal muscle take place. So here you have two terms: excitation, contraction, and then another word which we know as coupling. So excitation is an electrical event. That means the depolarization and the development of action potential. That is your excitation. So once the depolarization and action potential is developed there, in response to that, there is the mechanical event, and that mechanical event we call them is your contraction. The muscle will contract. So first there will be always an electrical event, and in response to that, there will be a mechanical event. So first there will be depolarization of muscle fiber, and in response to that depolarization, there will be contraction. And this electrical and mechanical event are connected together by one thing, that is your calcium ion. That means your excitation will first lead to increase in calcium ion, and in response to that increase in calcium ion, there will be contraction, which is a mechanical event. So this is the meaning of excitation, contraction, coupling. So the muscle will get excited by stimulus. Okay, there will be excitation, there will be depolarization, and then in response to that stimulus, there will be a mechanical contraction of the muscle. And the thing which is linking these two events is your calcium ion. Now we will see how this event happens. So you all know all nerves are all the muscle fibers are innervated by the motor neuron, which is coming from the ventral horn of spinal cord. So whenever there is a stimulus to the motor neuron, there will be development of action potential in that motor neuron nerve, and then this action potential will reach at the neuromuscular junction, and there will be release of some neurotransmitter, and the neurotransmitter in the case of skeletal muscle is your acetylcholine. This acetylcholine will act over the nicotinic receptors, and when this acetylcholine act over the nicotinic acetylcholine receptor, there will be opening of the sodium ion channels. As a result, there will be development of end plate potential. And when the amplitude of the end plate potential is such that it can carry the membrane potential of muscle fiber to the firing level, then there will be or threshold level, then there will be development of action potential. Once the action potential is created at the level of membrane of the muscle fiber, this action potential will run throughout the membrane of muscle fiber. You can see here in this diagram, a nerve is coming, Here it is getting depolarized. There is a release of acetylcholine receptor, and these acetylcholine will act over the receptor and the development of action potential, which is traveling along the membrane of skeletal muscle. In the skeletal muscle, we know there is T tubule or transverse tubule, and they penetrate into the sarcoplasm. And this T tubule is just for internal conduction of nerve impulses to the level of myofibrils, which is present inside the muscle fiber. So the action potential will spread along the surface of the membrane, and this action potential will be travel along the T tubule, and the action potential will penetrate deep into the muscle fiber. Now, what happens there? Now, if you see in this diagram, this blue line is your T tubule. Okay? In the T tubule, this red circle, they are notifying a receptor, and this receptor we call them as dihydropyridine receptor. These are voltage gated calcium channels basically, and these dilated sacs, which we call as terminal cisternae. So we know that there is a T tubule, and adjacent to this T tubule there is a dilated sarcoplasmic sacs, which we call them as terminal cisternae, which are very close or adjacent to the T tubule. In the terminal cisternae, you have another receptor which we call as ryanodine receptors. Okay? They are these receptors are ligand gated calcium channels. Now, what happened actually? These in the skeletal muscle, this dihydropyridine receptor and this ryanodine receptor, which is present at the level of terminal cisternae, they are mechanically connected to each other. Got it? So at this level, just remember, in the T tubule, you have voltage gated channels, which we call them as dihydropyridine receptors. And at the level of terminal cisternae, you have ligand gated calcium channel, which we call them as ryanodine receptors. And in skeletal muscle, both are mechanically connected. You can see a green spring type of thing is that, which is showing a mechanical connection between dihydropyridine receptor and ryanodine receptor. Now what happened? See, action potential will develop at the level of the skeletal muscle membrane, and this action potential will travel along the T tubule. Now, when this action potential reaches at the level of this dihydropyridine receptor, dihydropyridine receptor are voltage gated channel. So what happened actually there, because of this dihydropyridine receptor sense this voltage or the sense this depolarization, and because of that, what happened, there is some conformational changes at the level of dihydropyridine receptor, and because of this conformational changes in the dihydropyridine receptor, there is an opening of ryanodine receptor. Because of the conformational changes, this ryanodine receptor opens, because dihydropyridine receptor and ryanodine receptor both are mechanically connected to each other. So once there is a conformational changes at the level of dihydropyridine receptor, there will be opening of calcium channels, or we can call them as ryanodine receptor. So action potential coming, this change in voltage sensed by dihydropyridine receptor, there is conformational changes, and in response to that, this ryanodine receptor opens, and there is a release of large amount of calcium ion in the cytoplasm of skeletal muscle. So this is the way the calcium ion is increased. Got it? Now here you see that the opening of calcium channel is because of change in voltage. That means because of depolarization at the level of T tubule. This depolarization is causing conformational changes in the dihydropyridine receptor, and in response to that, there is opening of ryanodine receptor. So this kind of thing we call them as voltage activated calcium release, VACR, voltage activated calcium release. So voltage change is sensed by the dihydropyridine receptor, and it is communicated to ryanodine receptor, which opens. As a result, there is an increase in the calcium level in the sarcoplasm. So this is known as voltage activated calcium release. You will see the difference when we will discuss about the cardiac muscle, where there is calcium activated calcium release. In skeletal muscle, you have voltage activated calcium release. Now, because of the release of large amount of calcium ion in the sarcoplasm, the calcium concentration in the sarcoplasm increases. Initially, it is up to a level of 10 raised to power of minus 7 mole per liter. But because of release of large amount of calcium from the terminal cisternae, the concentration of calcium in the sarcoplasm increases to 2 into 10 raised to power of minus 4 mole per liter. So you see there is a large amount, there is the increase in the calcium concentration in the sarcoplasm of muscle. Now calcium has increased. Okay. Now how this contraction will happen? So this contraction, the mechanism for the contraction was explained by two scientists, which were your A.F. Huxley and H.E. Huxley. Name is similar. It seems that both would be brothers, but actually both are not linked anyway. They are two separate individuals from two different families. So these two scientists, A.F. Huxley and H.E. Huxley, explain that how the contraction happens once the calcium is released. And this theory is known as sliding filament theory or walk along theory. So they explain that how the actin filament slide over the myosin filament by the formation of cross bridge between the head of myosin and actin molecule. We all know that in a sarcomere, we have discussed in the last about the sarcomeres, so which was the structural and functional unit of skeletal muscle. So we have seen that in the sarcomere, the thin filament is interdigitating over the thick filament, and that portion we appear as a dark band or anisotropic band. And we know that they appear dark because they don't have uniform physical properties. Got it? So since they have both thick and thin filament, so they can't have a uniform physical property. So they appear as a dark band or anisotropic band. What I want to say is there is an interdigitation between actin and myosin filament. So, and we have seen that myosin filament has two, myosin molecule has two parts. One is your tail, and the second is your head. So this myosin head get attached with the actin filament, and because of that formation, because of this cross bridge formation between the myosin filament and actin, the actin filament slide over the myosin filament. So when the actin filament slide over the myosin filament, the muscle start contracting. So we will see how this process happens. But remember here, muscle contraction is because of sliding of actin filament over myosin filament. And this whole mechanism or whole process, how it happened, it was explained by H.F. Huxley and H.E. Huxley by their sliding filament theory or walk along theory. Now calcium has released. What happened then? The calcium, this released calcium, which is a large amount of calcium which is present in the sarcoplasm of skeletal muscle, they will bind with troponin C. We know troponin has three parts: troponin I, troponin T, and troponin C. Okay. So this subunit troponin C, this subunit bind with the calcium ion, and once the calcium ion bind with the troponin, there is some conformational changes at the level of troponin molecule. So because of this conformational changes, what happened? The tropomyosin move laterally, and because of movement of this tropomyosin molecule, the active site on the actins are exposed. So we all know that if you see an actin filament, so in the groups of actin filament you have tropomyosin molecules, and this tropomyosin is attached to, with actin filament because of troponin molecule. But once the calcium ion bind with troponin molecule, there is conformational changes in the troponin molecule, and because of this conformational changes, the tropomyosin moves from its place. And once the tropomyosin is moving from its place, this will expose the active sites. Active sites are those sites to which the head of myosin can get attached. So because of the increase in the calcium ion, the active sites over the actin filament are being exposed. Now what happened at the level of thick filament or myosin molecule? We know that the head of myosin has a property, and that property is that they have a ATPase activity. ATPase activity means they can break the ATP molecule. So they can break the ATP molecule into ADP and phosphate. But when there is a breakage of this phosphate bond, there's a release of large amount of energy. So this myosin head will bind with the ATP molecule, and because of their ATPase property, this ATP will be broken down into ADP and phosphate, and there is a release of large amount of energy. But remember that this ADP and phosphate which have been formed because of the breakage of the ATP, these remain attached with the head of myosin. Got it? Now, what happened because of the release of this large amount of energy, this myosin head, which was previously present in extended position, now take a perpendicular position. It will extend perpendicularly towards the actin filament, and this we call as cocking of the head. Got it? This we call as cocking of the head. In this diagram, you can see here, initially they are present in the extended position. Got it? But once the ATP is broken down, and because there's a release of energy, they will take a somewhat a perpendicular position. Got it? And this position we call them as cocking of the head. Now they will take a perpendicular position. The actin head will take a perpendicular position, and they will bind with the active side of the actin molecule. Now this formation of actin myosin complex, or we say that it is a formation of cross bridge between myosin filament and actin filament through the head of myosin. So because of this, two changes will happen. First is that the myosin head will flex towards the tail of myosin. So in this diagram, you can see here this is the initial position, and that this head of the myosin will bind with the actin filament, and this will lead to flexing of the head. It will move or it will flex. Got it? And this we call as power store. So there is a generation of energy because of breakage of ATP molecule. Then there is a cocking of head of myosin. The head of myosin will get attached to the active site of actin, and then there will be flexion of the head to the arms of this. Got it? So there is a formation of cross bridge between myosin filament and actin filament, and there is a flexion of head of myosin. So this is known as power stroke. And because of this power stroke, what is happening? The actin filament will slide over the myosin filament. And remember, in a muscle fiber, this type of cross bridge formation, large amount of cross bridge formation is happening between myosin head and actin filament. Okay, so when a large amount of myosin head get attached with actin filament, and they flex their head, and because of that there is a generation of large amount of energy, and then what happens is this actin filament will slide over this myosin filament, and there will be a contraction in the muscle fiber. And then what happens? So once there is a tilting of head, once the tilting of the head has happened, the tilting of head of myosin has happened, and actin filament has slide a bit, then what happens? There is a release of ADP and phosphate molecule. The ADP and phosphate molecule which were formed because of breakage of ATP molecule. So this ADP and phosphate molecule will be released from the head of myosin, and here at the release site a new molecule of ATP will get attached. Got it? At the moment a ATP molecule get attached to the place of a ADP molecule, there is a detachment of head of myosin from the actin. Got it? So first, what is happening? There is a exposure of active site on the actin. Then there is a binding of ATP molecule over the head of myosin. Then there is a breakage of ATP molecule, and there is a formation of ADP and phosphate molecule which remain attached with the head of myosin filament. And because of breakage of high energy phosphate bond in the ATP, there is a release of large amount of energy. Because of that, there is a cocking of head of myosin. The head of myosin will get attached with the active site of actin, and then the head of myosin will flex towards the arm. Okay? So there is a formation of cross bridge, and there is a tilting of head. And because of that tilting of the head, the actin filament will slide over the myosin filament. And when this tilting of the head happen, then this ADP and phosphate molecule are released from the myosin head, and in that place a new molecule of ATP is attached. The moment the ATP molecule is get attached, then the head will get detached, head of the myosin will get detached from the actin filament. Then again this ATP molecule will be broken and there is a release of energy, and then there is a cocking of myosin head, and then there is again attachment of head of the myosin with the actin, then there is again tilting of the head of myosin, then there is again sliding of the actin filament, and then again the ADP will release and new ATP molecule will be attached, and then there is a detachment, and then there is again this ATP molecule will be broken down and there's a release of energy, and again there is a cocking, and then again there will be attachment. So you see this process of attachment and detachment will keep on going, and because of that what is happening, the actin filament slowly slide over the myosin filament, and when the actin filament slide over the myosin filament, then what is happening, there is a contraction, there is a contraction at the level of myofibril, and this contraction process is happening throughout the myofibril in all the sarcomeres. What if this cycle is continuing? So this will generate a large amount of force, and because of that, there will be contraction at the level of myofibril, and then there is a contraction at the level of muscle fiber, and then the whole muscle will start contracting. Now this process, now what changes happens because of this at the level of sarcomere? You see, this is the sarcomere and resting sarcomere. The length is 2.5 micrometer because we know the dark band is 1.5 micrometer and the adjacent white bands are 0.5, 0.5. So that makes the size of the sarcomere in resting state, that is about 2.5 micrometer. Now, when this contraction happens, then what is happening? The actin filament starts sliding over the myosin filaments. Got it? And because of that, what is happening? This Z bands, which is present at the end of the myosin, which is present at the end of the sarcomere, they start coming closer to A band. Got it? As a result, the width of I band will keep on decreasing, and the size of the sarcomere will also keep on decreasing. At maximum contraction, what will happen? These two Z lines will come along the side of A band, and at that time the length of the sarcomere would be just the length of A band, that is your 1.5 micrometer. So when the contraction is happening, the Z line start moving towards the A band. As a result, the size of the I band will keep on decreasing. At maximum contraction, the I band Z line will come along the A band, and at that time the size of sarcomere would be 1.5 micrometer. So this process of attachment of myosin head with actin filament, and then the sliding of the actin filament over the myosin filament, and then there is a contraction. This process will keep on happening till the active site of actin is being exposed. Okay, and this active site of actin will be exposed till there is an increase in calcium concentration in the sarcoplasm of muscle. So for the muscle relaxation, it is very important that the calcium concentration in the sarcoplasm should decrease, because till the calcium concentration in the sarcoplasm is high, the muscle will keep on contracting. So for relaxation, what is happening? The calcium, there is a calcium ATPase pump in the sarcoplasm of in the sarcoplasmic reticulum of muscles. So this calcium ATPase pump, they will pump back the calcium ion from the sarcoplasm into the sarcoplasmic reticulum. And when the calcium ion are pumped back from the sarcoplasm into the sarcoplasmic reticulum, the concentration of calcium will decrease. And when the concentration of calcium will decrease, then there is a cessation of interaction between the actin and myosin filament. For contraction, it is very important there must be increase in the calcium concentration in the sarcoplasm. And for relaxation, it is very important that there must be decrease in calcium concentration in the sarcoplasm. Calcium concentration is increased because of voltage activated calcium release. That means there is a depolarization which is sensed by the dihydropyridine receptors in the T tubule, and because of that there is a conformational changes, and this dihydropyridine receptor, which is mechanically linked with the ryanodine receptor. So what happens whenever there will be conformational changes at the level of dihydropyridine receptor, the ryanodine receptor in the terminal cisternae will be opened. As a result, there will be release of calcium from the sarcoplasmic reticulum. Got it? And when the relaxation is needed, then the calcium ATPase pump, which is present at the level of sarcoplasm. So this will get activated, and because of that, the calcium will be pumped from sarcoplasm into the sarcoplasmic reticulum. Now, this process, calcium ATPase pump, is a this process is known as, this is a active process, because calcium ATPase pump require ATP. Got it? This is your calcium ATPase pump. So whenever this pump get activated, the calcium from sarcoplasm is pumped into the sarcoplasmic reticulum. You can see here, this is the process of release of calcium. Calcium is released, contraction is happening, and then calcium will move from the sarcoplasm into the sarcoplasmic reticulum. Here you can see calcium ATPase pump is pumping back the calcium into this. Now, two things here you need to remember. You see, relaxation, contraction of the muscle is the active process, because ATP is required. ATP is binding with the head of myosin, which is breaking the ATP into ADP and phosphate, and there is a pocking of myosin head. So contraction is the active process, it requires energy. Similarly, the relaxation is also an active process, because for relaxation you need to reduce the calcium concentration in the sarcoplasm of muscle, and for reducing this calcium you need to activate a pump which we call as calcium ATPase pump, which is present in the sarcoplasmic reticulum. Got it? So here remember, in contraction and relaxation of skeletal muscle, that for contraction also you need energy, it is an active process, and for relaxation also you need energy, which is also an active process. Now, few things I will explain you. One thing is your rigor mortis. Rigor mortis, if you see anyone, a dead individual, so you will see that if a person dies, then the muscles goes in the state of sustained contraction. So you will see that it is a very common practice in our household, that whenever a person get expire because of any reason, then first thing the family members will do, that they will align the position of the body of this dead individual. They will straighten the leg of the people, they will make the hand straight, they will close the mouth with some thread, they bind that thing so that mouth doesn't remain open. Because what happened actually, if you leave a dead body, if a person die, and if you leave that dead body in that very position, then the muscle will go into sustained contraction, and then it will be very hard for you to strengthen, to make the limb straight again. Okay. So this is we call as rigor mortis. Okay. So in the rigor mortis is a basically state of contraction that occur after death. And the reason for the rigor mortis is that you see, actually after death there is no generation of ATP. And when there is no generation of ATP, then there will be no relaxation of muscle. So whatever the muscle contraction has happened, they remain in that same state of contracture. Got it? So this we call as rigor mortis, and after death there is no generation of ATP, so there is a calcium can't be pumped back into the sarcoplasm. Okay, and because of that calcium concentration in the sarcoplasm remain high, and because of that, the interaction between actin and myosin remains there, and there is a sustained contracture. So the contracture which happened after the death is known as rigor mortis. It is because of depletion of ATP, and this depletion of because of this depletion of ATP, the the calcium can't be transported back into the sarcoplasmic reticulum, and the interaction between the actin and myosin complex keep on happening. And the duration of this rigor mortis generally is about 5 to 16 hours. Okay. After that, the muscle will relax. The reason for this relaxation is that after death, there will be release of some, you can say, some enzyme from the lysosomes, and because of that, there will be proteolysis. That means there is damage of the protein. So this relaxation will happen because of proteolysis. The muscle will start degenerating. Got it? So initially, in the first, you can say 4 to 8 hours, there is sustained contracture of the muscle because of rigor mortis. After that, there is some relaxation of the muscle, and this relaxation is because of proteolysis. The cell will go or in this autolysis. There is a release of some enzymatic enzymes from the lysosome, which will cause proteolysis. Second status we know as contracture. The contracture, the best way to understand is that if you see, you will see that some guys go to the gym, and when they go to the first day of the gym, one of the very common instruction that your gym instructor will give you, that when you are starting exercise, when you are first doing, when you are starting your this, so first you should go with very warming up, and then you should start with very low, less load. Maybe you will go to the gym on the first day, they will give you dumbbell of 2 kg or 1 kg. Okay. And then they will ask you to gradually increase the weight of your dumbbell. Then gradually you make it 5 kg, then you 10 kg, and 15 kg. But sometimes what happens when the boys goes to the gym, they are very excited, and they go and they feel ashamed to take a do this bicep exercise with 1 kg. They will start doing directly with the dumbbell of 10 kg. Okay, so they will able to do that on that day, no problem. But what happened after doing the exercise, when they come to their home, maybe in evening time, they will see that they are not able to strengthen their hand. हाथ को सीधा नहीं कर पाएंगे या फिर ज्यादा फ्लेक्स नहीं कर पाएंगे. The muscle will go in a state of sustained contracture. Got it? So this is we call them as contracture. So contracture, it's a sustained contracture of the muscle without any action potential. Now what is happening? वो बंदा क्या करता है कि फर्स्ट डे जाके 10 केजी का डंबल उठा लिया उसने, उसके अंदर अभी इतना ग्लाइकोजन स्टोरेज या मसल हैज नॉट बीन सो डेवलप्ड, ठीक है, टू बेयर दैट वेट. So initially he is able to do all these things, but when the moment he is coming back, once he has completed exercise, तो उस वक्त क्या होता है कि maximum ATP of that fellow have been depleted. And since the ATP has been depleted, what will happen? There will be no relaxation. And the muscle, whatever the contraction state the muscles are there, they will go in that state of contraction. So it is because of depletion, acute depletion of ATP. And because of depletion of ATP, there will be no transportation of calcium in the sarcoplasmic reticulum. So the interaction between actin and myosin will keep on happening. As a result, the muscle will go in the state of sustained contracture. So this is we call as contracture. Okay, sustained contraction of the muscle without any action potential. Or when this happens, so what is the advice that any doctor will give you? That you stop with your exercise for the next 5 days. Okay. So slowly ATP and everything will be formed, and slowly the interaction between actin and myosin will stop, and the calcium will go back to the sarcoplasmic reticulum, and slowly the muscle will get relaxed, and then you are able to do it. So this is known as contracture. Heat rigor is something different. Heat rigor, here there is a shortening of the muscle because of exposure of high temperature, 50 degrees Celsius or maybe more. So the heat rigor is because of coagulation of protein. So rigor mortis and contracture is because of depletion of ATP, and because there is a sustained interaction between actin and myosin, so the muscle is remain in the state of contraction. Heat trigger, here the muscle shortening is taking place not because of contraction is taking place, not because of depletion of ATP, rather it's because of coagulation of protein. So whenever the temperature is raised above 50 degrees Celsius, then this coagulation of protein of the muscle fiber will happen, and that will cause heat trigger. It happens in the case of burn. Okay. When you're having a state of burn, you can see the people are coming with limbs flexed, hand flexed. बर्न का कोई पेशेंट होगा, अगर ज्यादा बर्न परसेंटेज होगा उसका, मे बी अबव 70-18% बर्न किसी का हो जाएगा, तो यू विल सी दिस पेशेंट विल बी coming to the ward with flexed limbs, flexed arm and flexed leg. So that has because of this heat triggers, because of coagulation of the protein. Another important aspect is your malignant hyperthermia. So as the name suggests, malignant hyperthermia, that means very severe rise in the temperature. Body temperature rise a lot. Okay. So this malignant hyperthermia is because of the mutation in the gene level, which is forming your ryanodine receptor. So in some person there is a mutation in the gene which is forming your ryanodine receptor, and because of that mutation, what happened actually, these persons become very susceptible to some anesthetic gases. For example, halothane. So if a person is having this mutation, and suppose he has some planned surgery, and when he goes to operation theater, and he is giving anesthetic gases, for example, halothane is given. So these persons are very susceptible to these gases. So what happened in response to that? There is a release of large amount of calcium from these ryanodine receptors, and because of that very large release of the calcium from these ryanodine receptor, the muscle goes in very sustained contraction. So there will be extreme rigidity. So when the muscle will go in the state of rigidity or sustained contraction, then there is also increase in body temperature, because whenever the muscle is contracting, some amount of heat is generated. Okay. So at the operation theater, you will see that after giving anesthetic agent, there is a rigidity in the muscle and there is a rapid increase in the body temperature. Okay. So this we call as malignant hyperthermia. Reason for malignant hyperthermia, I told you, because of the mutation in the ryanodine receptor, and there is a release of large amount of calcium whenever these persons are being exposed to the anesthetic agents like halothane, which will lead to rigidity, and this rigidity will cause increase in body temperature. So this is known as malignant hyperthermia. Now we will discuss something about tension and the length of the muscle fiber. Before discussing about the tensions and the length, we first discuss about a few definitions regarding length. What is resting length, optimum length, what you mean by equilibrium length, what you mean by initial length. So resting length, the length at which the muscle is present under natural condition in the body. Resting length. जिस condition में muscle आपके body पे होता है. So you have seen that the muscles are attached to the bones by tendons. ठीक है? There is a point of origin, there is a point of insertion. So all the muscles are being attached to the skeletal framework of your body through the tendons. So this is your resting length. Optimum length, the length of the muscle at which they develop maximum active tension. We will see what is active tension, but at this level, muscle ka wo length at which they will develop maximum active tension. Now you should remember that most of the muscle in your body, they are attached in such a way that the resting length is same as compared to optimum length. Okay? The optimum length is the length of the muscle at which they develop maximum active tension, and the resting length, the length at which it is present in your body. And in your body, the muscles are attached in such a way that in most conditions, the resting length is same as optimum length. Equilibrium length is the length of the muscle fiber when they are being cut from their bony attachment. So there is a muscle which is attached to the bone by tendons. When you cut both the ends, okay, so whatever the length the muscle will be having, so that will be your equilibrium length. Initial length, just the length of the muscle before it contracts. Before the contraction, the muscle का length होगा, that is your initial length. So these all things are written in your books. The concept of resting length, optimum length, equilibrium length, and initial length. Optimum length you should remember because we are going to discuss it again when we discuss about the curves and graphs. Now length tension relationship. See, what is the relation between the length of the muscle and the tension which is developed in the muscle? It is said that the tension which is generated by the muscle, or the force of contraction which is generated in the muscle, that will depend upon what is the number of cross bridge between which is formed between actin and myosin. Because more the cross bridge formation between actin and myosin, that means more there will be generation of force. Now the amount of the cross bridge will depend, kitna cross bridge form hoga, that will depend upon what is the amount of overlap between thick and thin filament. More the overlap between thick and thin filament, more there will be formation, more there will be attachment of myosin head with the actin, and more will be formation of cross bridge. So the more there is a overlap between thick and thin filament, more will be the cross bridge and more will be the tension which is generated in the muscle. That means the optimum overlap between actin and myosin will generate maximum force. If there is too little overlap between actin filament and myosin filament, okay, or too much overlap, I'll tell you what happens whenever there is a whenever suppose there is a sarcomere and you stretch the sarcomere a lot. When you are stretching the sarcomere a lot, what is happening? The amount of overlap between actin and myosin will decrease. And sometimes what happens when you are shortening the sarcomere too much, then what happens? The overlap between actin and myosin decreases, and the overlap between the actin and actin filament will increase. Okay. So since the overlap between actin and myosin filament is decreasing, so the amount of tension will be decreased. Okay. And this was the law was given a Frank-Starling law. The Frank-Starling he initially gave this law for cardiac muscle. So as per this law, the amount of tension developed in the muscle will depend upon the initial length of the muscle fiber within the physiological limit. That means ki more the length of the muscle fiber, more there will be tension. Okay. But if there is that too much stretching or too much shortening, okay, then the amount of tension will decrease. But this law also applies to the skeletal muscle fiber. The tension developed will be proportional to the length of the muscle fiber within the physiological limit. So at this level, just to make you understand, remember that the tension developed in a muscle fiber will depend upon the cross bridge formation, and the amount of cross bridge formation will depend upon what is the overlap between actin and myosin. More the overlap between actin and myosin, more there will be tension. Lesser the overlap, and lesser will there will be tension in the muscle fiber. Now this graph will explain how the tension developed in a sarcomere vary with the length of the sarcomere. So you see in this curve, this y-axis you can see here the tension which is developed at the level of sarcomere, and this x-axis is showing you the length of the sarcomere. You can see the point D, B, C, and A. These are showing at what length what is the tension, and here you can see the condition of the sarcomere at different length. Okay, so you see the point D. At point D, the length of the sarcomere is more, and here you can see what is the condition of sarcomere. That means here at point D, the sarcomere has been stretched, and because of this stretching, the interdigitation or the amount of overlap between this thin filament and the red one, this thick filament, is decreased. So as a result, the tension at this point is very less. Now as the length of the sarcomere is decreased, and slowly the length has been decreased. Here you can see the length is something like 3.5 micrometer, and here the length is something like 2.2 micrometer at point C. So here, as the length is being decreased, you see the tension is somewhat increasing. And at point C, you can see the condition of the sarcomere. At point C, you can see there is a maximum overlap between actin and myosin. Okay, and these actin filaments are not overlapping with each other. So here you can see there is an increase in tension. As you further decrease the size of sarcomere and you come at the level of B point, at the level of point B, the length of the sarcomere has become about 2 micrometer. So here you can see the tension remain as this C point. Here the amount of overlap between thick and thick filament is maximum. But one thing you will see that here this thin filament are just beginning to overlap between each other. They are just touching each other. They are not overlapping, they are just touching each other. Got it? So up to this level also the tension is maximum, just as C. But if you see the point A, at point A you further reduce the size of sarcomere. So when you further reduce the size of sarcomere, so you can see the condition of sarcomere here in this figure, point A. So you will see that here the actin filaments start overlapping each other, and as a result of this, what is happening with the overlapping between myosin and actin will decrease. So since the overlap of actin to actin is increasing, the overlap of myosin to actin is decreasing. As a result, the tension developed in the muscle will decrease. And if you decrease further size of sarcomere, then there is a further decrease in the overlap of actin and myosin, and the tension will decrease. So you will see that at the optimum length, the amount of overlap between thick and thin filament is maximum, so there is a maximum tension. If the length is more than the optimum length, then also there is a decrease in tension. And if the length is less than the optimum length, then also there is a decrease in sarcomere, a decrease in the tension. So remember here, at the level of optimum, when the length of the muscle fiber is optimum length, so at this point, the overlapping between actin and myosin is more, maximum. So the tension developed is maximum. If the length of muscle fiber is more than the optimum length or less than the optimum length, in both the condition, the tension will decrease because the overlap between actin and myosin will decrease. When the length is more, the overlapping between actin and myosin filament is very less. You can see at the point of D, there is no interdigitation, so there will be no formation of cross bridge. And at the point of A, what is happening? The overlap of actin to actin is increasing, but the overlap of actin and myosin is decreasing. So the amount of cross bridge formation is less. So the tension development will be less. Now coming to two terms, one is your active tension and another is your passive tension. Now if you see the muscle belly, a muscle fiber, so we have seen that a muscle fiber is there and inside you have myofibrils. Okay, and these myofibrils are made up of myofilaments, and these myofilaments are contracting. So these myofilaments are known as contractile elements of muscle fiber. Okay, when they contract, there is a contraction at the level of muscle fiber. Now you will see that this muscle fiber are covered by a connective tissue which we call them as endomysium. And this many muscle fiber, they form bundles and they are covered by perimysium. And many bundles, they come together and they form a belly of the muscle which we call them as epimysium. So you see that this muscle belly is covered by connective tissue sheets. Okay? And then the muscles are attached to the bony framework of your body through the tendons. Okay? So these tendons are also type of connective tissue. So in muscle fiber, you have two types of element. One we call them as contractile components or contractile element. Another we call them as elastic component or elastic element. Contractile components are myofilaments, which is present in the myofibrils or myofibrils, and this elastic components are connective tissue sheets. Okay? which is covering the muscle fibers, and the tendons which is attaching the muscle fiber to the bones. The connective tissue sheets which is covering the muscle fiber, we call them as parallel elastic component. And the tendons through which the muscle is attached to the bone, we call them as series elastic component. So the elastic component are of two types, parallel elastic component and series elastic component. Now, whenever you stretch the muscle, suppose you take a muscle and you stretch it with your hand. So when you are stretching the muscle with your hand, you are stretching the connective tissue. There is the development of some tension. So this tension, which is because of stretching of this connective tissue, we call them as passive tension. We call them as passive tension. Now, what you do, you take an electrode and you give a stimulus to the muscle. So when you give us an electrode and you stimulate the muscle, so there will be development of action potential and there will be a contraction at the level of myofibrils or contractile component. So this tension which is developed because of the contraction of the contractile component, we call them as active tension. So remember here always the passive tension is because of stretching of the connective tissue sheets, because of stretching of parallel elastic component and because of stretching of series elastic component. Parallel elastic components are sarcolemma or the connective tissue, and series elastic component are your tendons. And active tension is because of interaction of thick and thick filament or myofilaments. So tension developed because of that, that is your active tension. So hopefully you are, you understand what is your passive tension, active tension. So this is an experimental setup, and on the basis of this experimental setup, we will plot a graph and we will see how active tension, passive tension, and the total tension. Total tension means sum of active and passive tension varies when the length of muscle fiber is increasing. So you see in this diagram, there is a muscle. One end of the muscle is attached to the frame, okay? And then the other end of the muscle, what you do, you put a weight. Suppose first you put a weight of 5 gram. So because of this 5 gram weight which is attached to the other end, there will be stretching of muscle. The muscle length will increase. So you note the muscle length, okay? Kitna muscle length hai? And then there is a device by which you can measure the tension. And then you measure the tension. So at 5 gram weight, you note what is the length of the muscle and you see the tension. Now this tension would be because of stretching of your elastic components. So this is your passive tension. Okay? Then at this 5 gram weight, you stimulate the muscle. And then when you stimulate the muscle, so there will be contraction of the contractile elements. Okay? And because of that, there will be generation of force. So when you stimulate the muscle, at that time you measure the tension. Now the tension you're getting at after when you're stimulating, that is your total tension. Total tension means the sum of active and passive tension. पहले से पैसिव टेंशन था, स्टिमुलेट किया, कॉन्ट्रैक्शन हो गया कॉन्ट्रैक्टाइल एलिमेंट का, तो वो एक्टिव टेंशन जनरेट करेगा. अब दोनों का सम जो होगा दैट इज द टोटल टेंशन, वो आप मेजर कर लीजिए. तो आपने लिख लिया कि एट दिस वेट मसल लेंथ इज इतना, पैसिव टेंशन इज इतना एंड टोटल टेंशन इज इतना. ठीक है, पैसिव टेंशन और टोटल टेंशन आपको पता है तो आप एक्टिव टेंशन कैलकुलेट कर सकते हैं. ठीक है, टोटल टेंशन माइनस पैसिव टेंशन इज योर एक्टिव टेंशन. हो गया. फिर आप उस वेट को 10 ग्राम कर दें. 10 ग्राम में फर्दर स्ट्रेचिंग होगी मसल की, दैट मीन लेंथ ऑफ द मसल विल इंक्रीज. तो आपने लिखा 10 ग्राम वेट, नाउ मसल का लेंथ इतना है और उस वक्त जितना पैसिव टेंशन है आपने नोट कर लिया. फिर आप उसको स्टिमुलेट करेंगे और टेंशन देखेंगे. जो टेंशन आएगा वो होगा टोटल टेंशन, और टोटल टेंशन से आप एक्टिव टेंशन निकालेंगे. तो आप कर लेंगे कि 10 ग्राम ऑफ वेट मसल लेंथ इतना था, पैसिव टेंशन इतना है, टोटल टेंशन इतना है और एक्टिव टेंशन करनी है. इसी तरह आप 15 ग्राम करेंगे. ठीक है, वेट लगाएंगे, फिर पैसिव टेंशन नोट करेंगे, फिर स्टिमुलेट करेंगे, फिर टोटल टेंशन कैलकुलेट करेंगे, तो नोट करेंगे और फिर एक्टिव टेंशन कैलकुलेट करेंगे. तो slowly you keep on increasing the weight. Because of increasing in the weight, there will be increase in the length of the muscle fiber, है ना, और पैसिव टेंशन total tension or active tension आप calculate करें. Now you will see that how this total tension, active tension, passive tension will vary when you are increasing the length of muscle fiber. And when you plot this graph, you will get this graph something like this. So here, this green curve is your total tension. This red curve is your active tension, and this fluorescent blue curve is your passive tension. So you will see, and this resting length is your optimum length. Optimum length means the length at which that is the maximum tension. So active tension, you know, it is because of contraction of contractile element, and passive tension is because of stretching of series elastic component and panelastic component. So you will see that if you see the passive tension, you will see that if the length of the muscle fiber is less than the resting or optimum length, because in normal state, resting length and optimum length is same, is less than the optimum length or resting length, then you will see that passive tension is 0. This x-axis is your tension, and this y-axis is your tension, x-axis is your length. You will first see the passive tension. So when the length is less than the optimum or resting length, the passive tension is 0. Reason? Because there's no stretching. To produce a passive tension, you need to stretch. तो अगर मसल रेस्टिंग स्टेट पे है तो कोई स्ट्रेच है ही नहीं इसके अंदर, तो पैसिव टेंशन विल बी 0. But as you increase the length, what will happen? The passive tension will keep on increasing, because as you increase the length, the connective tissue will get stretched, and when the connective tissue is getting stretched, they are developing passive tension. तो जितना स्ट्रेच करेंगे आप, उतना पैसिव टेंशन बढ़ता ही जाएगा. ठीक है. Now active tension आप देखें. Active tension, when you will see, initially when the length of the muscle fiber is 0, so active tension तो होगा ही. But as you increase the length of the muscle fiber, ठीक है, so there is a increase in the interaction of the actin and myosin. There is more formation of cross bridge, so there will be first increase in tension, and the tension will increase to maximum level when the length of the muscle fiber is same as optimum length. Now when the muscle is stretched further, मतलब ऑप्टिमम लेंथ या रेस्टिंग लेंथ से आप मसल को ज्यादा स्ट्रेच करेंगे, तो व्हाट विल हैपन, द इंटरडिजिटेशन बिटवीन एक्टिन एंड मायोसिन विल कीप ऑन डिक्रीजिंग, एंड व्हेन द लेंथ ऑफ द मसल फाइबर हैज बिकम ट्वाइस द लेंथ ऑफ ऑप्टिमम लेंथ, मतलब ऑप्टिमम लेंथ के दुगना हो जाए, तो एट दिस टाइम व्हाट विल हैपन कि there will be no interdigitation between thick and thin filament. And when there is no interdigitation between thick and thick filament, there will be decrease, the active tension will become 0. ठीक है. So you see here the length, as the length of the muscle fiber first increases, so it will increase, with increase in length there is increase in tension up to resting or optimum length. But after that, if there is if the length of the muscle fiber become more, then this active tension will keep on decreasing, and when the length of the muscle fiber has become twice the resting length, then the active tension will be 0. So here at this point you will see that the total tension is just similar as passive tension. That means when the length of the muscle fiber is twice the optimum length, the active tension will be 0, and whatever the total tension is, it is because of passive tension. So here you can see the total tension and active tension are same. Okay. Now if you see the total tension, so when the length of the muscle fiber is less than the resting length, okay, so here the passive tension is 0. Got it? So here whatever the tension the muscle is having, it is active tension. So here you can see the green and red curve, both are corresponding to each other. So here whatever the tension in the muscle fiber, it is there with increase in length. This total tension is due to active tension, because less than the resting length there is no stretching, so the passive tension will be 0. So the total tension जो है वो active tension के ही वजह से है. And at the level of resting length, active tension is maximum. Okay, at this point also the passive tension is 0. So here total tension and active tension is similar. But as you increase the length, what is happening? The total tension, the active tension keep on decreasing. So here you can also see that the first there is some amount of decrease in total tension. So this amount of decrease in total tension is because of decrease in active tension. But after that, what is happening? The passive tension dominates. The passive tension keep on increasing, and with that, your total tension will also increase. Okay. But here, as the length become more than the active, this optimum length or resting length, the contribution of active tension keep on decreasing, and the contribution of passive tension keep on decreasing. Okay. So at when the length is less than the active, this resting or optimum length, total tension correspond to the active tension, and when the length is more, the twice of or you can say it is twice of the this resting length, then total tension is same as passive tension. Okay. So this curve, this is the explanation of this curve. Okay, you see this curve and you read, then you will get to better understand. Now coming to the type of contraction. What are the different types of contraction? So here there are two types of contraction. One is your isotonic contraction, another is your isometric contraction. So as the name suggests, isotonic. So here in the isotonic contraction, the tone of the muscle is constant, but the length of the muscle changes. So here there will be muscle shortening, but the tension on the muscle will remain same. Okay? So this is your isotonic contraction. For example, I tell you, suppose you are pushing a wall. Okay? You try to push a wall. So when you will try to push the wall, you will see that the here, sorry, this is a wrong example. In isotonic contraction, suppose you take a dumbbell of 10 kg. Okay? So 10 kg is the weight that arms need to lift. So your muscle will generate a force of 10 kg. Okay? So tone has become the same. And then when you flex, when you try to lift, what is happening? You will see the bulk or bulge in your bicep muscle. So this bulge in the bicep muscle is because of shortening of bicep muscle. So here the length of the bicep muscle has shortened, but the tone is same as the weight of dumbbell. Tone has not changed. It is 10 kg था, तो 10 kg force muscle में generate हो रहा है, जिसके वजह से you are able to lift the dumbbell. So here the tone has remained constant, that is the 10 kg of dumbbell weight, but the length of there is a flexion, and then you will see that there will be shortening of bicep muscle. So this is your isotonic contraction. Isometric contraction, as the name suggests, isometric. Length is not changing. So what is changing? The tone is changing. The force in the muscle is changing. So here in isometric contraction, there is no change in the length, but the tone is changing. Example is that suppose you are pushing a wall, you are trying to push a wall. So you first apply some force, suppose force of 10 kg. Wall is not moving, then you try to move, apply more force. After that, पहले 5 kg का weight force लगा रहा था, 10 kg का force लगा रहा है. अब और force लगा रहे हो दीवार हटाने के लिए, maybe आप 15 kg का weight लगा रहे हो. So here the tone is changing, but you see the length of the muscle has remained same. There is no change in any length of muscle. So this is an example of isometric contraction. Okay? So now one thing is that the isometric. There is some confusion. मतलब है कि muscle contract हो नहीं रहा, अब contraction क्या है? Isometric में क्या? There is no change in length. That means there is no contraction at the level of muscle. तो contraction होता तो shortening होती muscle की, है ना? So without the change of the muscle, how a muscle will contract? So this is an example. Sometimes people ask, so how isometric? There is no change. That means there is no contraction at the level of muscle. Then if there is no contraction, then how the muscle contracts? But actually, this is a misnomer. Whenever his muscle is able to generate a force, the muscle is contracting. If you are able to generate a force of 5 kg or 10 kg or 15 kg, that means your muscle is contracting. So next thing is that why the length is not changing. See, actually, what is happening? The again comes the concept of contractile component and elastic component. So what is happening is when you are pushing the wall, muscle is contracting, and there is a contraction at the level of contractile component. That means myosin and actins are interacting. Okay, and because of interaction of myosin and actin filament, cross-bridge formation is taking place, and there is generation of food. Okay, and there is a shortening in the muscle also. But whatever the shortening in the muscle is taking place, this is being compensated by stretching of elastic component, the paraelastic component and series elastic component. So contractile component जितना contract होता है उतना ही series elastic component, connective tissues and tendon get stretched. Got it? So as a result, the size of the muscle fiber remains constant. So there is a contraction at the level of contractile element, but there is a lengthening at the level of elastic component. As a result, the size of the muscle remains same. Few important in the differentiation between isotonic and isometric contraction you should know. First is that the shortening. Isotonic. So here in isotonic, the tone remains constant, but of course the length will change. So of course there is a shortening in the muscle fiber. Isometric, as the name suggests, there will be no shortening of it. Okay. Second point is increase in tension. Isotonic, we know that tone remains constant, so there is no increase in tension. Isometric, here the tension is increasing. Okay. So there is increase. Now, if you see the point, this work done. So we know that the work is what? Force into displacement. Okay. So isotonic contraction, if you see, so there is a shortening, this change in length. So there will be movement, displacement. So there will be there is some work done. But in isometric contraction, there is no displacement because the size of the muscle fiber doesn't change. So the work done is zero. Okay, as per the formula. So accordingly, if you see the amount of heat generated, it is said that whenever work will be done, there will be some generation of heat because of the friction. So there will be amount of heat generation in isotonic contraction will be more. An amount of heat generation in the isometric contraction will be less. Okay. So if you see the efficacy of efficacy of muscle contraction is more in isometric contraction. Efficacy means that what is the amount of energy. Suppose you give some amount of energy to the muscle. अगर किसी इंजन की efficacy नापना, तो इंजन की efficacy इस तरह नापते हैं कि कितना ATP गया इंजन ने सपोज, और वो जो भी एनर्जी इंजन में गया उस प्रोपोर्शन का कितना एनर्जी वर्क में कन्वर्ट हुआ. Because whatever the energy is generated at the level of engine, some amount of energy is converted into work and some amount of energy will be wasted as heat. So those engines who are able to generate more heat, that means they are able to do less work. So when a muscle is showing an isotonic contraction, so they are generating more heat. That means the work done will be less. Okay, for the same amount of energy. And in isometric contraction, the work, the amount of heat generation will be less. So if you see in isometric contraction, the efficacy of muscle contraction will be more. So when a muscle is showing isotonic contraction, efficacy is less, and when a muscle is showing isometric contraction, the efficacy of muscle will be more. That means for the same amount of energy, the muscle will be able to do more work when they are contracting in isometric way. And for the same amount of energy, the muscle will be able to do less work if they are showing an isotonic contraction. Example I told you, in isotonic contraction, lifting a bucket from the floor also isotonic. When you lift a bucket filled with water, okay, so the tone will be same as the weight of the bucket, but you see your bicep, you will see that there will be increase in bulging. That means there is a shortening. Okay. And isometric contraction, I'll give example. When you're pushing the wall, the length of the muscle fiber will not be changing, but the tone in the muscle fiber will keep on increasing. Now, types of the muscle fiber. So what are the different types of the muscle fiber which is present in your body? Now, two types of muscle fibers are there in your body. Okay. The muscle fiber that react very rapidly. Okay. For example, if you see a muscle of your eyes, extraocular muscles, so whenever you fix your gaze to any point, you see your eye will keep on moving. Okay. So they are very fast acting muscles, and there are some muscles which are very slow acting, but they show prolonged contraction. For example, the muscles which are acting against your gravity, the muscle which are maintaining your postures, the muscle of your back, the anti-gravity muscle in your lower limb and upper limb. So they are making you stand against the gravity. So they contract very slowly, but they show a very long contraction. So they are slow fibers. So two type of fibers are there. For some activity, you need a muscle which react very rapidly. So they are made up of fast fibers, and some muscles they are acting slowly, but they are important for very long contraction. So they are basically composed of slow muscle fibers. And the type of muscle fiber which you will have, it's not like that a human, a person will be having only fast fiber, or human, a person will be having a slow fiber. ठीक है? Any individual will be having both type of fiber, both fast and slow fibers. But the proportion of the fast and slow fiber in a person may vary. ठीक है? किसी पर्सन में फास्ट फाइबर का परसेंटेज ज्यादा हो सकता है, किसी बंदे में स्लो फाइबर्स का परसेंटेज ज्यादा हो सकता है. And this is depend upon genetics. ठीक है? So in some muscle fiber, in some individual will be having more percentage of fast fibers, and in some individual there will be more percentage of slow fibers. And on this basis, it is said that athletes are selected. Suppose you need someone for a 100-meter race, है ना? So there was a athlete Usain Bolt. He was a world record holder, है ना, for 100-meter race. So suppose that person is going to do this run. So for this you need what type of fiber? Per individual in which the percentage of fast muscle fiber will be more. So you will select this kind of individual and you will train them. But suppose you need an individual for marathon run. Okay. So for marathon run you have to select an individual which is having more of slow fibers. You know? And that will depend upon gene of the person. You will see that most of the marathon race record holders they belong to African countries, Ethiopia and this kind of country. They are very poor countries. They don't have any kind of sport facility, but still most of the record holders are from these African countries, because genetically their muscles are meant for very prolonged activity. They can work for very long time. They can run for very long time. Okay. And similarly, if you see some European populations, suppose weightlifting, or you see persons with this high jumping. So most of the record holders they are from the European countries. So they can generate a very large amount of force in a very short time of duration, but they can't do a very sustained activities. Okay. So that percentage will depend upon genetic. Now you can see this is the twitch of slow fiber and muscle fiber, fast fiber. So fast fiber, the twitch duration is very less. The ocular muscle, you see the twitch duration is very less, and you see the slow fibers. Okay, that twitch duration is more. So they act very slowly, but they show long contraction. So your soleus muscle, your gastrocnemius muscle, they are having slow muscle fibers. So here you can see that if you see an average man, then fast muscle fiber, the percentage is of 55%. And slow twitch muscle fiber, the percentage could be 45%. But if you see a marathon runners, so you will see that fast twitch muscle fiber are just 18%, and the slow muscle fibers are about 82%. Okay. Similarly, if you see a jumpers, uh, so those person in here, you will see that the fast twitch muscle fibers are about 63%, and slow twitch muscle fibers are just 37%. So for any sport activity where endurance is required, okay, for example swimming, for example marathon, where very prolonged slow generation or slow contraction but prolonged contraction, where endurance and stamina is required. So you have to select those individuals in which the percentage of slow muscle fiber is more. But in those individuals, but in those sports activity where you require generation of large amount of power, generation of force in very short time. So those for this kind of sport activity, the individual which are having fast muscle fiber, they are more suitable. So for selecting any individual for any activity, it is very important that we do a genetic profiling of that individual. So what kind of genetic composition that individual is having, and accordingly that individual must be selected for any kind of physical activity or any kind of sports events or any kind of army or military selections. Now coming to the slow type of fibers, and we will see some properties of the fast and slow muscle fiber. The slow muscle fiber, type 1 muscle fiber is also known as type 1, and it is also known as red muscle fibers. Okay. Red muscle fiber, why? Because they have large amount of myoglobin content. Myoglobin content are oxygen carrying pigments which are present in the muscle. So because since large amount of myoglobin is present, so because of that the color is red in color. So if you see the properties of slow muscle fiber, they are slow twitch, that means they act very slow. They will contract slowly, low force, but they are fatigue resistant muscle fiber. Slow twitch, low force, fatigue resistant. So if you see that they are smaller than the fast muscle fiber, then the size is small. When the size is small, they will be able to generate less force. More the length, more the muscle, the tension generated as per the Flamsteed law. So the size is small, so the low force they are able to generate. They have less activity of myosin ATPase. Myosin ATPase, which break the ATP into ADP and phosphate for the generation of energy, which is responsible for contraction. So since they have a decreased activity of myosin ATPase, so they are act slowly. So they are slow twitch. They have high myoglobin content, oxygen content is very high. They have very high capillary density. And so when the capillary density is more, that means more and more blood flow, more is the oxygen supply. They have large amount of mitochondria. That means large amount of ATP generation is happening through oxidative phosphorylation. That means through aerobic respiration. So all this high myoglobin content, high capillary density, and large amount of mitochondria, they all promote aerobic type of respiration. So whenever there is an aerobic type of respiration, then there is generation of energy for a very long time. The muscle can contract for a very long time. The supply of energy can happen for a long time, and the muscle do not get fatigue, because whenever there is a dominance of anaerobic metabolism, so then there is a generation of large amount of lactic acid. In anaerobic metabolism, there is a generation of large amount of energy in very short time, but the side effect is that they will generate lactic acid, and lactic acid will cause fatigue or rest there. But here there is a, since there is a large amount of myoglobin which give red color, a large amount of capillary density, a large amount of mitochondria. So there is a dominant of oxidative metabolism or aerobic metabolism. So the chance of getting fatigue is less, and they can work for a very long time. So this type of muscle is basically good for endurance type of activity. Last point is they have very low glycolytic enzymes. Glycolytic enzymes are important for glycolysis, and they are important for anaerobic metabolism. So those muscles in which are required to generate large amount of energy, a large amount of force in very short time duration. So in them the anaerobic metabolism is dominant. But that's the in these muscles the glycolytic enzyme is good. But in this slow muscle fiber, the aerobic metabolism is dominant. Got it? So that's why they are less fatigue resistant. So the size is small, so they are able to generate low force, slow twitch because of low activity of myosin ATPase. Why fatigue resistant? High myoglobin content, high capillary density, many mitochondria, and they have very low glycolytic enzymes. In total, because of all these events, aerobic metabolism is dominant here. Okay, that's why they are fatigue resistant. Now coming to the fast fibers are also known as type 2 fibers, and they are also known as white muscle. White muscle, why? Because they have very low myoglobin content. So the oxygen carrying pigment myoglobin is present in less quantity, so they appear white in color. So if you see the properties, they are fast twitch, they contract very rapidly, high force, they're able to generate more force per unit area, and they're less fatigue resistant. That means they will get fatigued very easily. So they are large in size as compared to this slow muscle fiber. So the size of the muscle fiber is large, so they are able to generate high force. They have more activity of myosin ATPase, plus they have extensive sarcoplasmic reticulum. So both this property, that high activity of myosin ATPase and extensive sarcoplasmic reticulum, because of that they contract very fast. So they are fast twitch muscle fibers. Why they are less fatigue resistant? Reason is that they have high glycolytic enzyme content. So glycolytic enzyme content means they are generating more energy by anaerobic metabolism. So anaerobic metabolism produces energy very fast but for very short duration. So that muscle will generate large amount of force or energy in very less time. But again, I told you the side effect is that they will produce large amount of lactic acid, and that will cause fatigue. Secondly, they have low myoglobin content, they have low capillary density, they have few mitochondria. So because of all these low myoglobin content and less capillary density and few mitochondria, they don't have much of oxidative metabolism. And because of less oxidative metabolism, the energy generation will be through oxidative pathway will be less. And more there will be energy generation because of anaerobic metabolism. And because of that, there will be there is a more chances of getting fatigue. Now coming to the relationship of velocity and the load. Okay. How the velocity of contraction varies with the load. Okay. So it's very simple that velocity is always velocity of contraction is inversely proportional to the load. मतलब कि मसल में जितना आप लोड बढ़ाएंगे उतना ही वेलोसिटी ऑफ कॉन्ट्रैक्शन घटता जाएगा. सिंपल सी बात है. व्हेन यू आर रनिंग, ठीक है, विदाउट suppose you are running, so you are running fast and then suddenly someone put you a weight of 5 kg or 1 kg in your one leg and they ask you to run. Of course the speed of your running will decrease. Then someone will add you a 5 kg, then someone will increase the load to 2 kg. Then only at that time you are able to run, but the speed of running will decrease. Then suppose someone loads increase the load to 5 kg, and 5 kg is the maximum load which you can, which your leg can lift. So that time what will happen? The load is same as the maximum load which your leg can lift. So what will happen? You will not be able to run, and that time the velocity will become zero. So it is inversely proportional. So if there is no load, you can see in y-axis this is velocity of contraction, on x-axis there is a load. So you can see here. So when there is no load, the velocity of contraction is maximum. But as the load is increased, what you see, the velocity of contraction will keep on decreasing. And when the load has become equal to the maximum force which a muscle can generate, मतलब लोड उतना हो गया जितना वो मसल मैक्सिमम फोर्स जनरेट कर सकता है. तो at that time what will happen? Muscle will not contract. At that time the load has become zero. So when the load is becoming zero, so this is signifies the maximum force which is a muscle can generate. Okay. Now this is the comparison of velocity. You can see here. First we were discussing blue line, then you see another green line. So what this green line is signifies, this A is your blue line and B is your green line. So this green line is signifying your velocity load curve of red muscles. So we know that the red muscle are able to generate less force. Okay. And this A line is demonstrating you, or blue line is demonstrating you the white muscles or fast muscle fibers. So this fast muscle fibers, their size is more, so they are able to generate more force. So this is, in the fast muscle fiber, the velocity of contraction is also more, plus the maximum force with that muscle fiber will be able to generate, that will be more. And this B is the graphical representation of velocity of muscle, velocity of contraction to the load. So here the maximum velocity which they can generate will be less, and the maximum load which they can lift, that is also less, because the size is small. Got it? So for velocity of contraction and to the load, remember that velocity of contraction is inversely proportional to the load. As the load is increased, the velocity of contraction keep on decreasing. And when the load on the muscle become equal to maximum force which a muscle can generate, at that time the velocity of contraction will become zero. Okay? And velocity of contraction and the maximum force which a muscle can generate is more in fast muscle fibers, and velocity of contraction and the maximum load which a muscle can bear is less for slow muscle fibers. Now coming to the motor units, now we have seen that from a spinal cord a motor neuron is coming, and when they enter into the muscle belly, they will divide into large number of branches, and each branch will innervate a muscle fiber. Okay? So motor unit by definition it is a single motor neuron and all the muscle fiber which they innervate. एक मोटर न्यूरॉन जो डोर्सल कॉलम और स्पाइनल कॉर्ड से निकल रहा है, और सॉरी वेंट्रल कॉलम स्पाइनल कॉर्ड से निकल रहा है, वो जितने मसल फाइबर को इनर्वेट करेगा सबको मिला के कहते हैं मोटर न्यूरॉन. दैट इज मेकिंग वन मोटर न्यूरॉन. So motor unit, a single motor neuron with all the muscle fiber which they are innervating. Now the number of muscle fiber which a motor neuron will innervate that varies depending upon what type of muscle it is. If I suppose a muscle is there where very precise control of is required, okay, for the movement. For example, suppose your muscle of your hand or muscle of your eyes. So if you want to draw something or write something, a precise, a graded movement of your is required at the level of finger. And to produce that precise graded movement, a very fine control is required for the contraction. So in this kind of muscle at which a large amount of control is required. So here the number of muscle fiber in the motor unit is very small, less. So here in this kind of muscle, if you see the number of muscle fiber which are innervated by motor neuron, that is very less. It is something like 3 to 6. But in those muscle in which that very precise control is not required, and these muscles are responsible for very gross movement. For example, muscle of your back, which are required to stand up. Muscle anti-gravity muscles of your lower limb or upper limb, for example, thighs. So these large muscles, so where very precise control or graded control is not required. So here a motor neuron is innervating large number of muscle fibers. So here a motor neuron or here a motor unit will be having 600 to 1200 muscle fibers. Now in this diagram you see some muscle fibers are green in color, some muscle fibers are blue in color, and a motor neuron is coming, it is branching, motor nerve is coming, it is branching and it is innervating. So you will see a motor nerve is coming and it is giving its branches. But one thing you will see that if this motor nerve is innervating only green muscle fiber, not blue muscle fiber. So this green muscle fiber is one type of muscle fiber and blue muscle fiber is a different type of muscle. Okay. So remember all the fibers in a motor unit are of same type. अगर वो स्लो मसल फाइबर्स है, अगर एक मोटर न्यूरॉन स्लो मसल फाइबर को इनर्वेट कर रहा है तो वो सिर्फ स्लो मसल फाइबर को इनर्वेट करेगा. अगर एक मोटर नर्व फास्ट मसल फाइबर को इनर्वेट कर रहा है तो जितने भी मसल फाइबर हैं उस मोटर यूनिट वो सारे फास्ट टाइप ऑफ फाइबर्स. So remember this, all the fibers are of same type. Second thing you have to remember, in a motor unit all the muscle fibers are not grouped together in a bunch. Rather, fibers of one motor unit interdigitate with the fibers of another motor. So here you can see green fiber is there. You can see here all the green fibers are not bunched together. Rather, in between the green fibers you have blue muscle fibers. So green fibers are making one motor unit and blue fibers they are showing another motor. You can see here the fibers of one motor unit are interdigitating, are lying with the fibers of another motor unit. So remember that motor unit overlaps, and because of that there is a coordination and support of one motor unit with another motor unit. So 2 points to remember, that
the motor unit, all the muscle fibers of a motor unit are of same type. Second, the fibers of motor units, one motor unit lie in the neighboring of the fibers of another motor unit, which is required for coordination or support of for the contraction of one motor unit with another motor unit. For types of motor units, there are three types of motor units: slow, then fast, resistant to fatigue, and then fast, fatigable. S means slow, FR means fast but resistant to fatigue. Fast, FF means fast, fatigable. So slow motor unit, they contract slowly to produce a very controlled contraction. Fast resistant to fatigue is that when more powerful response is required for very short time. So then this motor units come into play. Fast resistant to fatigue. Fast fatigable means that when most demanding task is happening. That means when task is there and when less amount of energy is required, then slow muscle fiber. Then if there is more energy is required, then fast resistant to fatigue. And then if some more and more amount of energy is required, then fast fatigue. Okay, there. So these are three types of motor units. Now requirement of motor units, meaning that when the muscle is contracting, supposed to do a task. So when you are suppose you are asked to, you are sitting in a chair and someone asks you to run. So now to do this task, what you will do? First you will stand up from your chair, then you will walk a few distance, and then you will start running. So running is a task, but to do the task, first you have to stand up from the chair, walk few distance, and then you start running. Okay. Now to do this task, different motor units will come in play to perform these activities. So when you are standing from your chair, this task requires low energy, less amount of force is required, so slow motor unit will come in play. Then you start walking, then amount of energy requirement or amount of force required will be more. So here fast resistant to fatigue will come in. They will contract. They will these motor unit will come in picture. Then you will start running. Then more amount of force is required. So at that time, your fast fatigable motor units will come in action. So this is the to do this task of from sitting to running. Uh, Different motor units come in. So it's not like that this interaction or the requirement of motor unit is happening in a very random way. ऐसा नहीं कि फास्ट फटीगेबल पहले कॉन्ट्रैक्ट करने लगा फिर फास्ट रेसिस्टेंट फटीग कॉन्ट्रैक्ट कर रहा है स्लो कर रहा है. They have a pattern as per the force. So first your slow motor unit will contract, then fast resistant to fatigue will contract, and then for more demanding tasks fast fatigable will. So this is the pattern of requirement of motor unit whenever they are used. Now the gradation of muscle response. Gradation means कि कितना force generate होगा. Suppose a motor muscle is being activated, okay? So for different type of doing task, different amount of force is required, and this amount of force which is generated, at what it will depend. So the amount of force developed in the muscle will depend upon what is the number of motor units activated. मतलब कि अगर एक मोटर यूनिट एक्टिवेट होगा तो कम फोर्स जनरेट होगा, अगर दो एक्टिवेट हो रहे तो ज्यादा, अगर 10 एक्टिवेट हो रहे तो और ज्यादा फोर्स होगा. Then the frequency of discharge of the individual muscle nerve fiber. So if the frequency is increased, then that means motor unit is contracting more and more. The frequency of contraction of the motor unit will be more. More is the depolarization, more is the contraction, and more will be the force. So the motor unit will contract more rapidly, and when it will contract more rapidly, then there will be more generation of force. Then what is the length of the muscle fiber? Because length of the muscle fiber will decide upon the interaction between actin and myelin. More will be the length, more will be the interaction, and more will be cross bridge formation, and more will be the force. So the gradation of muscle will depend upon what is the number of motor units activated, what is the frequency of discharge of individual fiber, and what is the length of the muscle fiber. Now coming to the simple muscle twitch. Simple muscle twitch have been done in your experiment. For your definition, just you see, this muscle twitch is a mechanical event that you are recording over the curve. Remember this. There are two types of event. One is, I told you, in excitation contraction coupling. One is your electrical event. Electrical event is your action potential which is developing in the muscle. And in response to that, there is a mechanical event, and the mechanical event is the contraction of the muscle. And that contraction we call them as twitch. Okay. So simple muscle twitch is a mechanical event which you are recording over a graph or curve. Because of this corona, you are not able to do that. Otherwise, we would have shown you in lab how muscle is contracting and how this curve is obtained. So muscle twitch is whenever a single action potential or depolarization is given to a muscle fiber, there's a brief contraction, and there's a brief contraction, there's a relaxation. That is your simple muscle twitch. Duration could be 7 to 100 milliseconds, depend upon what type of muscle fiber it is. If it is fast muscle fiber, the twitch duration will be very less. If it is slow muscle fiber, the twitch duration will be more. Now, you know that there's a latent period that when you're giving a stimulus, till you contraction begin, that period is your latent period. Then there's an increase in the tension in the muscle, that is your contraction phase. And then there's a decrease in the tension, that is your relaxation phase. Okay. Now this curve, it is showing that how electrical event and mechanical event are overlapping with each other. This red curve is your electrical event. Right? So this is the action potential in the muscle. Duration of action potential is very less. It is something like 2 to 3 milliseconds. And in response to that, there is a mechanical contraction. And this mechanical contraction will start only about 2 to 3 milliseconds, 2 milliseconds after the start of depolarization. So this is the depolarization. Okay. So after the start of depolarization, after about 2 milliseconds only, then contraction will start. And this is because you know that there is a latent period. Some time is required for transmission of nerve impulses, release of neurotransmitter, and some time is required for the action of neurotransmitter to take place at the level of receptor. So contraction is bit, you can say, delayed as compared to depolarization. It's not like the depolarization is overlapping the contraction phase. So the depolarization, the contraction will start about 2 milliseconds after that. And then there will be repolarization, and this contraction phase will go, and then there will be relaxation phase. Now here you will think is that you see that refractive period of this action potential. This fall in the latent period of this simple muscle twitch. So in the latent period of mechanical contraction or the contraction phase, the refractive period of this action potential is falling. So in the first phase of your latent period is denoting your absolute refractive period, and second phase of your latent period is your showing relative refractive period. So this is the overlapping you see. Here the duration of action potential is very short as compared to the duration of simple muscle twitch. The duration of simple muscle twitch could be about something like 20 to 35, 40 milliseconds. But action potential duration is very less. And here the refractive period of action potential is falling during the latent phase. Got it? So if you are giving any stimulus during the latent phase of this contraction of action potential, this simple muscle twitch, there will be no contraction. Now coming to the summation, just few slides are left, to 5 minutes, we will end up this. Summation means that the adding together of individual twitch contraction to increase the intensity of overall muscle contraction. Meaning that the 2-3 twitches are being added up, okay? And because of this summation of these individual twitch, there will be increase in the force of contraction. So this adding together of individual twitch contraction, which increases the force of overall force of muscle contraction, we call them as summation. Now summation can happen in two ways. One is your multiple fiber summation, another is your frequency summation. Multiple fiber summation means that by in this multiple fiber summation, you are increasing the number of motor units which are contracting. Suppose one boy is doing a work, so he will do his work up to his maximum capacity, जितना भी करना वो अकेला करेगा. अगर फिर दो लड़के आ जाए तो दो लड़के मिलके काम करेंगे तो ज्यादा काम करेंगे, फिर तीन लड़के आ जाए तो वो ज्यादा और काम करेंगे, चार लड़के आ जाए तो ज्यादा काम करेंगे, है ना? तो दिस इज योर मल्टीपल फाइबर समेशन बाय इंक्रीजिंग द नंबर ऑफ मोटर. ठीक है। फ्रीक्वेंसी समेशन इज दैट कि बाय इंक्रीजिंग द फ्रीक्वेंसी ऑफ कंट्रैक्शन, मतलब कि सपोज एक बंदा है, वो काम कर रहा है, बहुत ही स्लो है, सुस्त है, तो वो दिन भर में सपोज उसे मान लीजिए 10 पैकेट पैक करने के लिए कहा गया है ना, मतलब पैकेट पैक करने के लिए कहा गया, तो ही इज वेरी स्लो लेजी, तो वो सपोज दिन में 10 पैकेट पैक कर रहा है। देन समवन कम्स एंड स्टिमुलेट हिम, स्टिमुलेशन कुड बी एनीथिंग, स्कोल्ड कर रहे, उसके बॉस आया उसे डाटा, तो ही स्टार्ट डूइंग वर्क मोर एंड मोर, तो हो सकता है कि वो दिन में 20 पैकेट करे, फिर अगर उसे और डांट पड़े तो हो सकता है वही बंदा वो 30 पैकेट पैक करे। So here the frequency of doing that work is increased. He is doing more rapidly the work. So this type of thing known as frequency summation. So example is that we suppose for any contraction, this muscular contraction, the signal comes from your brain. So the signal is generated in your brain and it is carried by the descending tract, and it is comes to the dorsal root of spinal cord. So if the signal which is coming from the brain is weak, so they will stimulate a few nerve fiber, and that will lead to activation of few motor units. So the force of contraction will be less. But if the signal which is coming, the strength of the signal which is coming from the brain, that is, the strength is increased. So they will stimulate more and more motor units. अगर strength of signal कम होगा, तो वो ऐसे motor units को stimulate करेंगे जिनका threshold कम हो, है ना, जो तो उनको स्टिमुलेट करें। अगर सिग्नल का स्ट्रेंथ ज्यादा होगा तो वो जो मोटर यूनिट्स जिनका थ्रेशोल्ड कम है उनको तो स्टिमुलेट करेंगे ही, साथ साथ में वैसे मोटर यूनिट जिनका थ्रेशोल्ड ज्यादा है उनको भी स्टिमुलेट करें। दैट मीन्स मोर नंबर ऑफ मोटर यूनिट्स विल कॉन्ट्रैक्ट टुगेदर। So when more number of motor units will contract together, there will of course there will increase in the force of contraction. So this is your multiple fiber summation. Frequency summation means as the frequency will increase, so what will happen? There will come a point where the second contraction will happen before the first contraction is over. Meaning that suppose you give one contract, if you give one stimulus, so there will be one contraction will be produced. Now you give a second stimulus, and the frequency of second stimulus is such that the second contraction is produced before the first contraction ceases. So at a time you are having one contraction plus you have second contraction also. That means the force of contraction will be increased. So if the frequency of contraction is such that the contraction is produced before the first contraction ceases, so this first and second contraction will add up. As a result, the force of contraction, the strength of contraction will increase. So this type of summation known as frequency summation. But depending upon what is the frequency of stimulus, it can produce incomplete tetanus or complete tetanus. Tetanus means sustained contraction of muscle. If the muscle goes in sustained contraction without relaxation, we call them as tetanus. Okay? So incomplete tetanus is that when frequency of stimulus is such that there is a period of incomplete relaxation between two stimuli. Meaning that आप एक stimulus दिया, वो contraction produce किया, contraction गया, फिर relaxation phase में जा रहा था. Relaxation phase में जब जा रहा था, जब relax होना complete होने वाला था, उसी बीच आपने एक और stimulus दे दिया, वो फिर again contract कर देगा. Before completing this relaxation, it will again contract. फिर वो relax होने जा रहा था, before वो अपना relaxation complete करता, आपने फिर एक stimulus दे दिया. Before completing this relaxation, it will again contract. So there you will see that gradually there is an increase in the force of tension. Okay, the tension in the muscle, the force of contraction will keep on going. So when there is an incomplete relaxation, when the frequency of stimuli is such, there is a period of incomplete relaxation between two stimuli. So that is known as incomplete tetanus. Complete tetanus is that muscle is in a state of muscle is going in contraction phase में जा रहा, ठीक है. Before it can go into relaxation phase, you give a second stimulus, so it will again contract, ठीक है. Then again it contract, and before the second contraction can go in relaxation, you give another stimulus. So when the frequency of the stimuli is such that there is no relaxation between the stimuli, so what will happen? The muscle will keep on going in sustained contraction, and the successive contraction will fuse together and the whole muscle contraction appear to be completely smoothed. So there is no relaxation phase. Here in this curve, you can see that contraction is happening, relaxation is going to happening, but this relaxation is not complete. Before this relaxation happen, again another contraction. And then again, this muscle will contract, and before this relaxation is going on, but before this relaxation happens, there's another contraction. So there's a period of incomplete relaxation. But in complete this tetanus, there is no relaxation. Muscle goes in sustained contraction. So this is a complete tetanus. Now last two slides, electromyography. So this is basically a diagnostic test. Okay. So it's an electrodiagnostic technique where you are recording the electrical activities which is happening in the muscle at the time of rest or when they are contracting. So basically they are recording the action potential. So whenever the muscle is contracting, they're generating an action potential. Some electrical events is happening. So because by recording these electrical events, you can diagnose many things. And this mechanism of recording the electrical events when the muscle is contracting, we call them as electromyography. Now, how this process happens? So here you see the muscle is there, and those muscle, this muscle का आपको electromyography करना है. At that point, you will place the electrodes, and leads are there, and this is connected with a processor where signal is going on, and this processor is connected with your display. Display is your computer. So muscle is there, and you are placing the over the muscle some leads, and whenever there is generation of some electrical events, this signal will be picked from this lead, and this signal will be picked from the lead, and it will go to this box where all processing of the signal will happen. So here the amplification of this, because these electrical events have very low amplitude, which is very hard to decode. So you need to amplify that signal. And so here the amplification and filtering will happen. So after that, okay, this amplification of filtering, which we call as processing of signal, this biological signal is converted into digital signals. So this is happening at the level of processor, and then this digital once this conversion is done, this is displayed in your computer, and you can see the curves, graphs, and this thing. And then you have to decode to know how things are there. Now, depending upon the mechanism or the process of recording, this electromyography are two types: surface EMG or needle EMG. Surface EMG basically is for teaching purpose. They have less value with respect to diagnosis. So, but important advantage is that it's a non-invasive process. So here you are just placing the lead over the muscle whose EMG need to be done. So they are in the form of disc or bars, and whatever the action potential is generated, they have been recorded. Needle EMG is invasive. This is a disadvantage, but is more important with respect to diagnostic. So because needle EMG, you can place the needle to the neighborhood of the muscle, in the muscle itself, whose EMG is going to be there. So there directly they are picking up the signals through the hypodermic needles. There are needles, the length is less. Through the hypodermic needle, you place the needle over the muscle, and this needle will go in the location of the muscle. They will record the electrical activity at the time of rest, electrical activity when you're putting the needle, that we call as insertional activity, and the electrical activity when the muscle is contracted. And then you have the action potential recorded over the curve, and then you will analyze that thing. So here you can see the curve. So this is, you can see the curve that you are getting when you have placed the electrode and when the muscle is resting. Okay. So here the amplitude of the curves you can see is very less. Right? And then you ask the person to, suppose you have placed the lead over the bicep. Right? So in the resting state you are getting this curve. Now you ask the person to flex the bicep. So when he will flex the bicep, that means when you are contracting the bicep muscle, then there is more and more requirement of the motor units. Okay, that means there is more and more generation of action potentials more and more generation of the force. So you will see that there is the increase in the amplitude. So by this seeing this amplitude, you can say whether the contraction is proper or not, whether the force generated is proper or not, or there is some kind of myopathy. Because whenever there will be myopathy something, this amplitude increase will not be so much. So you got it. So this we call as recruitment of motor units. That means when you're flexing, when you're contracting, more and more motor units are coming, they're getting activated, and there's an increase in the force of contraction. Okay. So and with that, there's an increase in the amplitude of the wave that you're getting in the EMG. Now, analysis of the EMG can be done by qualitative and quantitative. Qualitative is that you are getting the curve, and with your experience, you can say that there's an increase in the amplitude or there's a decrease in the amplitude. Okay, that is a qualitative. So just with your visuals, sound, with your visual, plus also in EMG you have sound also. You can hear the sound. When the muscle is contracting, there is a generation of large amount of sound, and you can see the you can assess the intensity of the sound. If the intensity of the sound is less, then the force of contraction would be less. So this is your qualitative. It's subjective. So with your experience, you are looking to the curve, and by comparison with the curve, the amplitude of the curve, you can say whether the EMG is normal or it's abnormal. Another is your quantitative. Quantitative means that here you can get a curve, and with that curve has a you can say it has the values. So you can see what is the amplitude, what is the amount of amplitude in the voltage millivolt, what is the duration. So that means what is the duration of this action potential, and by this you can have a better analysis. You can better compare different curves, and then you can say whether this difference could be these changes are significant or not, and if changes are happening, then what kind of deformities. So when you're doing a EMG, what are your goals? Goal is two. One is that the localization, and what is two? Second is your severity. So suppose there is some kind of problem in the muscle. So that problem, suppose muscle is not contracting, है it has become flaccid. So this problem can be because of problem in the muscle. This problem can be because of the problem at neuromuscular junction. This problem can be because of the nerve, which is innervating the muscle, or this problem can be because of some problem at the level of spinal cord. It could be something. Okay. So where the problem is there, so EMG help us to localize that. Second is severity. What is the amount of? If suppose the myopathy is there, then what is the amount of myopathy? If the muscle is severely affected, of course, the amplitude of this contraction will become very less. Okay. So localization is that you are able to localize that if the changes are there, if this then it's because of suppose you do EMG and you see the amplitude is less, then the problem could be at the level of muscle or neuromuscular. Problem is not at the level of nerve. And second thing is that by doing this needle EMG, you can find whether the problem is at the level of muscle or neuromuscular junction and what type of fiber is involved. And then by taking the biopsy, you can find what pathology is actually there. So this is the goal of EMG, is localization and severity. To localize where the lesion is. The second is that what is the severity. So I think it's time now. It's time for your lunch. You can go for your lunch. I have taken a lot of your time. So in the next one, we'll see some different topic. Okay, we are going to end this lecture.